You know, what's funny is I adjust my camera here for a second. There we go. You know what's funny is when it comes to professional wrestling, you can't even have an opinion, on, what you like about certain wrestling companies. You can't. I mean, we know that AEW is not doing so well when it comes to certain aspects of it. Whether it's attendance, whether it's booking the women's division right, whether it's decent storytelling, what have you. But one thing it's always been good at, according to a lot of folks, is its in-ring wrestling action. And that's one thing a lot of people, even myself, will agree upon is, it has, it has that down pat. Like it knows what, it's basically like it knows what the hardcore fans want to see more, than anything else. And that's good in-ring action. They want wrestling that's going to give them the oohs and the ahs. It's going to keep them on the edge of their feet, even if it has no build behind it. That's why sometimes on these independent shows, you get certain big name stars showing up, facing somebody, and there's no reason behind it. Like I remember going to an NWA Central States Wrestling event, NWA CSW, and I saw AJ Styles twice. I saw him twice. And one of the matches I saw him in was against Showtime Darren Sanders. And that match was unbelievable. AJ did put Darren over. I think AJ was also there before against another opponent. I think it might have been Michael Strider. I'm not really sure. Um, but he faced off against Darren. They had a great match, and like I said, he put Darren over. Um, but the thing is, there was no real story behind it except maybe who's the best in-ring competitor as we spoke. At that time, like who was better? Was it Darren? Was it AJ? Was Darren the next AJ, or was he the equivalent of AJ? There was a little bit of a mini story there, but it didn't have any other story behind it. Like it wasn't a feud. It wasn't something that been building for years and all that. It was just this is a dream match fans want to see Central States Wrestling wise, NWA wise, because NWA was part of TNA at the time, or associated with TNA at the time, and they decided to give it to them, and that's what they did. That's what they did. You know, and it was, it was great. It was a good match. It was a great match. Like I said, it was a great match. But again, the common thread is it had no real story behind it, and it was just a match for the fans that fans wanted to see. Now, now, with that said, it seems that one of the common complaints fans have with AEW is the lack of storytelling, and that they mainly focus on the wrestling. That all they really are in disguise is just a major indie fed, with no real substance. And I can understand where they're coming from with that. I can. I can understand where they're coming from with that. But sometimes, that's usually probably the best direction to go in, because that you're in, you're in an era right now to where the biggest niche, to scratch, the biggest itch and niche to scratch, I should say, is just giving people good in-ring competition. It don't matter if it has a story behind it. It don't matter if it's being built on a short-term basis because a championship is involved. You know, it's mainly done because fans like good wrestling, and that's it. And we got to remember what Tony Khan wanted to do with AEW. Even despite having to change it over to, oh, it's an entertainment show or sports entertainment or whatever. We got to remember what Tony Khan's first initial, plan was for AEW, and it's still kind of the plan today. And that is it, and that is to focus AEW as a legitimate, wrestling company, and that, it's a legit, and that by doing so, it could help legitimize wrestling, pro wrestling, as a sport, not just sports entertainment. So we got to remember that that was Tony Khan's first first plan, his overall goal, was to do that. I mean, sure you're gonna have the silliness and stuff in there once in a while. That's reminiscent of things you would see in DDT Pro and New Japan and elsewhere, Chikara, you name it. You're gonna have that in there. There's no doubt. But the overall consensus is that Tony Khan wanted to focus on more of being more of a professional wrestling company that is here to legitimize wrestling as a sport and nothing else. And I think that's the one thing some fans seem to forget, that this is the reason why Tony Khan puts wrestling first and foremost above storytelling. Yeah, he's got people there behind the scenes, like a Chris Jericho, like a Sanjay Dutt, like a Bryan Danielson, a Moxley, you name it, that are probably taking him, into a room and saying, hey, we need to do more than just have good in-ring competition. We need to have stories behind that competition. We need stories and, we need stories and, reasonings behind certain things happening. I mean, on Collision last night, they, they set up the idea that we could have FTR and LFI teaming together against the House of Black and Ricky Starks and Big Bill. That's something a lot of fans would like to get into. A lot of fans would like to get into that. Last night we had Hikaru Shida, retain her women's championship against the returning Abaddon, who had been out with an injury. And Abaddon's got a great look to her. She's got a very, very, I guess you could say, unique horror, dead girl, gothic girl look to her that could get her places. And if you're bringing her back with this new look and everything, you just got to let her go. Just let her go, do her thing, and you could build around that. You have a situation going on with, what is it, Ruby Soho and who else? Daddy Mac or something like that. I think that, or yeah, I think it's Daddy Mac. I'm not really sure. Let me check here. I know Pro Wrestling Network has it on the Facebook page. But you have Ruby Soho involved with this backstage thing with one of the members of the former JAS. Daddy Mac. I think that's his name. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure if that's who it is, Daddy Mac or Cool Aunt Luke or something. They are. They're building something there. They're able to build something there and everything. So, they got the, I guess you could say they got the, the talent to do a lot of stuff, right? They have the talent to do a lot of stuff, but, the question is, will they do it? Will they build upon, some of these things that they have, or some of these little hints and stuff that they have, going forward. I mean, I mean, they have everything there. As I was just trying to look there, that's why I was a little distracted. I do apologize. But they have, the elements there for good storytelling, not just for Collision, but for Dynamite as well. And by extension, Rampage and Ring of Honor. They have the elements there, but they're just not utilizing them. And I think that's what bugs a lot of folks. That's what bugs a lot of folks. Like, you like, they're okay with you having good in-ring wrestling, but show that you could do more than that. Show that you can do more than that and everything. And they showed the hints. Heck, they gave a freaking free pay-per-view main event. They gave a pay-per-view main event for the AEW World Championship for free on Collision last night. And a lot of people praise that as being one of the best matches in the company's short history, as well as one of the best matches of the year. And, that's great and all, but there was no build. There was no build to it, storyline-wise, except, MJF's going to break Kenny Omega's streak as the longest reigning AEW World Champion in company history, which is an accomplishment in itself. But be that as it may, that's it. And the question is, where does Kenny Omega go from here? Does he resume his feud with the Don Callis family? What's happening? Nobody really knows. And I think that's the common complaint. I mean, we're getting hints through an interview on Dynamite with Chris Jericho and Renee Parquette that Jericho's got a big friend in mind to help him combat the Don Callis family and Will Hobbs. Everybody's thinking it's going to be Paul White, the Big Show, but we don't know. There are certain elements there that they can work on that a lot of people see and say, hey, you could build upon this. You can make this. You could build upon this. You could, push this, and it would help. But again, it's just one of those situations where I think people forget. I think people forget that despite having all these elements there, that what AEW, All Elite Wrestling, was known for from the beginning, what Tony Khan's goal was, that he set out to try to accomplish and still is trying to do to this day, his main goal was to focus on the in-ring pro wrestling action to help legitimize pro wrestling as a sport and not just sports entertainment. That has always been his goal. Like, you can have good stories if the situation presents itself to, work with. You can have good stories, the opportunity presents itself with, to, revolve around the good in-ring action. But most of the time, you're just going to get good in-ring action, and that's it. It's mainly because Tony Khan is a wrestling fan first and foremost. That's it. He's a wrestling fan first and foremost. Yes, he can get behind a good story. Let's not forget, he was part somewhat of the MJF situation when MJF debuted the devil persona, where he wears that mask and everything. He was part of that. So he knows that a good story can help gain interest or garner interest, get people's attention. But, the one thing people are pointing out is if he's mainly focused on the wrestling, that's not going to help. It's not going to help unless you have something behind it. I mean, look what we got going on with Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. We all know Adam's going to be Sting and Darby's partner, for the sixth man at Full Gear. We know that. And that ties into that storyline, that's going to get people talking. And then, of course, you got Sting's retirement. Basically, his retirement tour in the next few months is what it's going to be dubbed as. You're bringing in Ric Flair and all that. So they know what good storytelling, could equivalent to, the interest it can garner. Don't get me wrong. But the point at the end of the day that a lot of people seem to forget is Tony Khan, like I said, is a wrestling fan. And his main goal with this company since day one is to make it not just an alternative to WWE and maybe other places like Impact/TNA, MLW, New Japan, whatever. But his main goal from the very beginning was to establish AEW as a pro wrestling company, wrestling, in-ring wrestling first and foremost, company, as well as to utilize that, wrestling, in-ring action wrestling, if you will, first and foremost, as a way to legitimize pro wrestling as a sport, as a legitimate sport. That was his main goal from the beginning. And everybody knows that. And I think some people seem to forget that. But look, I don't blame them for feeling the way they do. Because yes, Tony Khan still has a lot to learn. And one of the major things he has to learn about, once again, is along with good wrestling, you can have that. You also have to have good storytelling. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. And I am out.